Welcome back to America on the Road with Chris Teague. This is Jack Nerad with you. And it is news time on America on the Road. We're starting a new year, and we're starting a new year with big news. I mean, Nissan and Honda have signed a Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU, to explore a potential business integration and a joint holding company. It's big stuff, but it's a collaboration aims to accelerate efforts toward carbon neutrality, according to them. I think it's also to extend the fortunes of both of those companies. Nissan, in particular, has been having some pretty serious difficulties here. They're going to apparently share platforms, a bunch of commonality here. This is kind of a shock, isn't it, Chris?
It is. And, honestly, I've been puzzling over this, like I mentioned earlier, is what Honda could be getting out of this deal. I mean, it's not the leading automaker in the country, but it certainly isn't in Nissan's position. I could see Honda getting some EV technology and maybe a truck out of the deal, but I've been wondering what their motivation is here.
Yeah, I think there's and I used to work for a Japanese company back in the day. I worked for Mazda, and it's kind of interesting what the Japanese companies do and what the Japanese do. I mean, they kind of collaborate when one of them seems threatened. There was a time when Mazda looked like it was on the edge. There have been plenty of times when it looked like Nissan was on the edge, frankly, edge of going away. And they kind of get together. I don't know how it exactly happens, whether the government steps in and says, hey, why don't you guys get together and do something? But this collaboration, I think, is designed to prop up Nissan, which would be a big loss to the Japanese auto industry were it to go under. And I think that's the big deal here.
Yeah, and I think, the interesting part of this beyond the merger and the reasoning behind it is that Nissan is already in this alliance with Mitsubishi and Renault. And there's been talk of Foxconn, the smartphone maker, wanting to take over Renault's stake in Nissan. So there are a lot of moving parts here, Jack. I think it'll be really interesting to see what the company looks like, or what a combined company looks like when the dust settles.
Yeah, and to your point, too, this whole deal of involving Honda in this, Honda seemed like kind of a disinterested outsider to all of this up till now. And so the fact that, these are being shoved together in what might be kind of a shotgun wedding is really an interesting take. And you have Honda, which is doing, I think, fairly well. I think it actually does probably better in the United States than it does in Japan and some other markets. But and Nissan struggling, as we know, kind of worldwide. It'll be interesting to see how this goes forward and what this does to the Honda product plans.
Yeah, I agree. The good news here, if this goes forward, is that Nissan has a chance to survive, a real fighting chance, a little bit more than they do right now. And as you mentioned earlier, they've been on the slide for a while now. Their dealers aren't happy. The customers aren't happy. So I hope it works out for Nissan because, as I always say, more choice is better. And I like Nissan. So
yeah, there's a lot of Nissan vehicles that I really like. And, you mentioned one of them, the Frontier pickup truck, I think is a particularly good vehicle. And a competitor to a vehicle I think you're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's talk about 2025. Of course, it's a time for New Year's resolutions, many of which we ditch within a couple of weeks, apparently. I think they're saying, the second Friday in the month is the time where everybody just kind of says no to their resolutions that they've made. But we'll see how that happens. But in any case, it would be a very good thing to drive more safely during 2025. So here's some safety tips. Feel free to chip in and comment on these. I think number one tip, of course, is always buckle up. Use your seatbelt. It's amazing how many people don't use their seatbelts still. And this is the one thing you can do above all others to protect yourself.
Yeah, and it's against the law not to unless you're in New Hampshire. So, I don't know. I think seatbelts, the dings in the cars are one thing, but when you really think about it, it's one of the most primary safety features in your vehicle. So, and it's very easy to use. So keep it on.
Right. Here's another one, and this is probably dear to your heart and dear to my heart back in the day. It is choose the correct car seat for your children, install it correctly, and then transition them to seatbelts only when they're large enough to use seatbelts and ride in a regular seat. You have, I think, fairly old, young kids, if that isn't a weird oxymoron there. But I think, well, you tell me what's going on with them and seat belts and boosters
Yeah,
and all that.
one of the things I focused on when they were younger, they're 12 and 8 years old now, but one of the things I focused on when they were younger was installing the car seats properly. I switch cars every week, so I'm taking the car seats out and putting them in. And it's not hard to do, but you follow your directions. Many local fire departments, even volunteer fire departments, have programs where they teach you how to put the seats in and do it properly. And now that my older daughter is out of booster seats altogether, my younger daughter remains in a booster seat. We're still very careful with positioning and things like that. So it's easy to do. It just takes a minute out of your day. So it's well worth the time.
Right. Well, and here's something that kind of relates to maybe what we saw a little earlier in the week, and that is commit to driving sober and avoiding distractions. I mean, both of those things. I mean, when you're distracted, it is essentially like being drunk. And being drunk or on drugs of some sort, and we're seeing more and more of that, people behind the wheel. I mean, those are just tragically bad ideas.
Yeah, we complain about screens inside vehicles sometimes, but the reality is that they're there to keep you off your phone and give you some convenience without having to take your eyes off the road in some cases. So make use of those features. And frankly, there's no excuse for driving drunk or under the influence. So I'm not going to give you any tips there. Just don't do it.
Right. Here's some more. Never drive drowsy. That's another thing that's like being distracted or being drunk. If you're tired, or maybe you're taking like a cold medication or something like that, and you're a little drowsy, that can impair your ability to drive. And then you have to be aware of motorcyclists, bicyclists, and pedestrians. They're all over the place. They're where you might not expect them to be, and it's kind of critical that you pay attention to that.
Yeah, just a moment of double checking can save someone's life and keep you out of trouble and maybe stop you from damaging your vehicle. So I'd say take the time to do that.
Right. Well, let's talk about this Hyundai Guinness Book of World Records record, an historic achievement by the Hyundai Ioniq 5, kind of amusing to me more than anything. This is a standard production vehicle that was driven across India, about 4,900 kilometers. I think that's like 0.62 times 4,900. And if I could do math, that's the number of miles. It also had an altitude change of something like 5,800 meters. So that's about, 15,000, 20,000 feet, something like that. What is interesting to me, Chris, is this expedition began in Umling La in Ladakh, which, of course, is the world's highest drivable point above sea level, 57, almost 5,800 meters above sea level, and then concluded below sea level. So basically, they kind of drove downhill all the way. I mean, I'm wondering about this. It's like a weird thing to me.
Yeah, I was a little questioning this when you mentioned it to me earlier that we were going to be talking about it. It seems like a little bit of a silly record or a silly thing to do, but I can see Hyundai doing this to kind of demonstrate how robust the vehicle is, that it actually, can travel the range, or at least close to the range that they say it will, and that it can manage with the charging network in India, which I have no idea whether it's robust or not, but I assume in rural areas it's a lot like it is here, where you go a little ways and hope you can find something when you show up. So, I mean, it could be a neat thing. I do think that, these, some of these are just to get a press release out at the end of the year. So, you have to kind of take it with the understanding of that.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, good for them for setting a world record. I want to say a few things about this Genesis G80 Sport Prestige that I was driving, because I think it's one of the one of the best luxury sedans I've driven all year, and I'm wondering about your take on this vehicle.
I enjoy the G80. I think that, we've talked about Genesis' ability to combine value and luxury and styling, and the G80 really does feel like a flagship sedan. It's cheaper than the BMW 7 Series or Mercedes S-Class, and you get a lot of the same compelling features. We talked about some of the large cars that don't push the envelope and feel special, but I think that Genesis has done a good job of giving the G80 enough of that sort of specialness to make it worth the price.
Yeah, and the price I think is pretty compelling too. I think around $70,000 or so. Much less expensive than some of the competitors from Germany, for example. So I think it's absolutely worth a look, and I wanted to give it a little shout out at the beginning of the year because I've driven it recently. So I like the vehicle very much. And when we come back, we'll be doing some pretty serious road testing. In fact, Chris is going to road test the Ford Ranger pickup truck, and I'll be road testing the 2025 Volkswagen ID Buzz, a rolling parade. So stay with us for that, and we'll be right back right here on America on the Road.